Shalom, shalom, everyone, and welcome to On the Mic, to another episode of On the Mic. I'm Raquel, and we're coming to you today live from Jerusalem. As always, I'm here with my co-host, Bidi Deutsch, and we have it's actually a very special edition of On the Mic because we're going to be previewing the new documentary from AISH HA'AM in just a moment, and we're also going to be speaking to two of the students that are featured in the film in just a moment. So a lot coming up. I'm not sure. I just want to make an announcement. Like, I know a lot of you join us usually at 1 p.m. In the US. And because of the time difference, we're actually an hour earlier today than the usual time. So if any of you are joining us, please go ahead and let us know where you're joining us from in the world and say hi. Like I said, I'm joining you from Jerusalem. And Bidi, where are you?
I'm in Neve Michael, farm town, outside Beit Shemesh.
Beit Shemesh, Yofi. So anyway, like I said, it's this exciting episode. Bidi, do you want to tell us a little bit about the documentary, about AISH HA'AM, and what we're going to be hearing today from our two special guests?
So AISH HA'AM is the ballot AISH has running in the World Zionist Congregation. And they recently released, well, it hasn't been released online yet. It's coming soon. And we're offering you a teaser of the Frontline Warriors documentary, which chronicles the journey of three fierce advocates, college students who have been fighting anti-Semitism on their campuses and really are warriors for all the Jewish people. We're very blessed today to have Shabbos Kestenbaum with us. He's going to be joining us in a minute to give us an inside scoop on what it's really like. And I hope we'll share some practical tools that we can all take with us in our own journeys as being representatives for the Jewish people wherever we are.
Amazing. I'm very much looking forward to today's episode and hearing from Shabbos. Speaking of Shabbos, let's go ahead and welcome him to kind of give us a look of what we're about to see. Hi, Shabbos.
Hi, thanks for having me.
How are you?
Good to connect.
Where are you joining us from today?
Riverdale, New York.
New York. Okay, amazing. So for anyone who, doesn't know you, which these days I don't think that's possible in the Jewish world, but for anyone who is unaware of what's been happening and the whole documentary in AISH HA'AM, if you could just give us kind of a minute review on what we're about to see.
Yeah, sure. So Frontline Warriors is a narrative that depicts the story of three students, myself at Harvard, Eli Tzidis, who's a Jewish student activist at UCLA, and Eden Yadiger, who's another Jewish student activist at Columbia University, and really documents our experiences, our fight, whatever you want to call it, since October 7th. The reason why this is important is because it not just amplifies the voices of Jewish students who are not just tomorrow's leaders, but are today's leaders, people like Eden and Eli who are on the front, quite literally on the front lines. But it's also important because, as was said earlier, it's made in conjunction with the World Zionist Congress elections. The World Zionist Congress is the international body of the Jewish people. They allocate roughly $1 billion each year. Their headquarters in Jerusalem. And once every 5 years, they hold elections whereby the American Jewish community can vote on. You can vote your values, vote for the people you want to see at the negotiating table, vote for the principles you believe in. And the AISH HA'AM slate is the largest compilation of Jewish students ever assembled. It's Jewish students who you've seen on national media, who you've seen testify in front of Congress, who are filing lawsuits against their universities. So lots of organizations talk about empowering the next generation. But here's actually the most practical, most helpful, most pragmatic way that anyone can actually do it. They could just vote for the AISH HA'AM slate and make sure that people like Eden and Eli, who you're about to see on the screen, are given a seat at the table. Because as I told Prime Minister Netanyahu last month when we met with him, Jewish students have, in many cases, felt down by the adults in the room. And we are going to talk about Jewish values in places where there's tremendous hostility. We're going to wave our Israeli and American flags in places where you wouldn't typically wave them. And we're incredibly proud and confident of our Jewish values. And if you believe in the values we believe in, then as I said, vote for the AISH HA'AM slate, because you definitely want not tomorrow's leaders, but today's leaders, today's young leaders being in the room.
Amazing. I actually heard that AISH's slate is has the youngest members ever in the history of the World Zionist Congress. I heard that the other day. So that's incredible. It's literally today's leaders taking responsibility and standing up and taking their place in the Jewish world to fight for the Jewish people. Amazing. So I'm going to go ahead and, if this works, play a preview, and then we'll come back to you to hear more about it. Hopefully this works.
October 7th is a day that will forever live in infamy. 3,000 Hamas terrorists stormed into Israel. They killed parents in front of their children and children in front of their parents. They dragged 255 people, both living and dead, into the dark dungeons of Gaza.
As the war continues to rage between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip, efforts to reach a diplomatic resolution continue.
Israeli Defense Forces say their troops have stepped up operations in Gaza to bring Israeli and foreign hostages home.
A breakthrough still seems elusive.
My friends, defeating our brutal enemies requires both courage and clarity. Clarity begins by knowing the difference between good and evil. Yet incredibly, many anti-Israel protesters, many choose to stand with evil. They stand with Hamas.
Go colonize somewhere else.
They refuse to make the simple distinction between those who target terrorists and those who target civilians, between the democratic state of Israel and the terrorist thugs of Hamas.
Pro-Palestinian protesters are demanding UCLA divest from any companies with ties to Israel.
Students clashing with police, tents set up on college campuses. Across America, chaos engulfs universities as pro-Palestinian protests spread coast to coast.
Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's rules or code of conduct? Yes or no?
It is a context-dependent decision, Congresswoman.
That's your testimony today? Calling for the genocide of Jews is depending upon the context?
Get back! Get back! Continued clashes and threats of violence on college campuses coast to coast. Now,
ugly scenes at UCLA as pro-Palestinian protesters and their opponents engage in violent clashes.
The school has shut down on-campus classes, and Jewish students say they fear for their safety.
Free Palestine!
My name is Shabbos Kestenbaum. I'm a recent graduate at Harvard University. You know, this is my first time back. It almost seems like I'm at a scene of a crime. This was the place where I experienced anti-Semitism in the United States for the very first time in my life. Coming here, it's sort of bittersweet. This is where I called home for 2.5 years, but it certainly doesn't feel like it anymore.
I was so incredibly proud to be a Columbia student before October 7th, and I think that's how the vast majority of the Jewish community there really felt. I am the daughter of 2 Iranian Americans. My parents were both born in Iran and fled religious persecution and authoritarianism there. So I think, you know, being raised by parents who were persecuted because of their Judaism, who have a great appreciation for the country that we now live in and also for their Jewish identities has really shaped who I am and why I speak out so much about this issue. But also it frankly just feels like we don't have a choice.
My mother is from Latvia and my father's from Belarus. My grandmother is a Holocaust survivor, and so is my grandfather from my mom's side. Right? They don't mess around. They've seen it with their own eyes. I come from a long line of strong Jews without trembling knees. There's a lot of fear in Jewish students, and that's why I did what I did, to show the Jewish students that there's no need to be afraid of these monsters.
Never again must never be an empty promise. It must always remain a sacred vow, And after October 7th, never again is now.
Frankly, I think it's important that people start to align themselves with Palestinian resistance.
We are calling for a complete divestment by Colombia from any company complicit in Israeli apartheid and colonization in Palestine.
Israel is notorious for creating propaganda that sides their one-sided massacre against Palestinians.
I think at this point, it is undeniable that anti-Semitism is real, it is pervasive, and it is systemic across Harvard University. So right behind me was the site of the installation that my classmates put up with quotes from the PFLP, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which is a US-designated terrorist group. And what I found really remarkable about that installation, besides the fact that it had quotes from a terrorist organization, besides the fact that it called for the boycott of the world's only Jewish state, besides the fact that it called for violence against Jewish people, we Jewish students are not allowed to have our menorahs on campus overnight for the fear it will be vandalized. But this installation, which traveled all over the university, and it actually had Harvard police protect it 24/7. So when we talk about double standards, right behind me is a great embodiment of how Jews are treated qualitatively differently than other minority groups here on campus. I took classes that challenged me to go beyond my intellectual limits. I took classes that spoke about settler colonialism, apartheid, ethnic cleansing in the context of Israel-Palestine. Not because I agreed, but because I thought in an institution of higher learning, that's what we need to do. But we were taught as fact, not as political conjecture, as fact, that Jews have internalized the ways of Nazi Germany. That the Holocaust is analogous to the experience of Palestinians under the Israeli occupying forces. Right where we are now was the site where 10, 12 days after October 7th, about 100, 200 Harvard Divinity School students and faculty members gathered for a protest. And the protest called for the divestment from the Zionist entity. It called for the freeing of Palestine from the river to the sea. It talked about globalizing the Intifada. So being a Jewish student living 50 feet away, taking classes in these buildings, seeing your classmates, seeing your friends so shortly after October 7th, not condemning Hamas, not standing with Jewish students, but actually standing for the cause of the oppressors, was really daunting. And that was my first real experience at Harvard Divinity School and at Harvard University, broadly speaking, of Jewish lives don't seem to matter as much.
One night during the encampment, things got incredibly heated on campus. There were masked mobs chanting to bomb Tel Aviv and telling Jewish students to go back to Europe, to go back to Poland. And it actually got so bad that the group of Jewish students that were on campus that night were practically forced off campus and chased off by this mob that was screaming at them to go back to Poland, telling them that they were all inbred and have no culture. And as these students exited campus, they were met with more masked protesters, this time screaming at them that they vowed to repeat October 7th, not one more time, not 10 more times, but thousands of more times. And this sort of behavior went on for weeks, unchecked, while Columbia did absolutely nothing, until students occupied Hamilton Hall. Columbia, after about a day, was forced to finally take action and remove them. But at that point, the damage had already been done. I think a lot of people will say that that was an isolated incident, that the events of that night, or even of the several weeks that the encampment took place altogether, were isolated incidents. But that sort of festival of anti-Semitism doesn't just happen overnight. That's the direct result of decades of unchecked anti-Semitism brewing at universities like Columbia, and administrators not wanting to even acknowledge the problem. I was in a meeting with Columbia's new president, and she actually admitted that Columbia has a terrorism support problem. We asked her point blank, why do you think this is the case. And she responded that she didn't know, but she knew it was an issue. And when she inherited the role of president, interim president, just this summer, she didn't really realize what she was getting into in regards to this support for terrorism.
It's just Jew hatred. And that's why they choose to do what they do. They go out and they protest and they're harassed. I mean, our own rabbi at UCLA, Rabbi David Gorevich of UCLA Chabad, was physically assaulted by one of these masked up, hoodlums.
They beat their spouse until they're tired. That's how they sleep at night.
You want to talk about something?
Record. Make sure you record really good.
Tell me how much you love America, maybe. Come on.
Pedophile rabbi. I'm gonna make that phone disappear.
Sure. Back off. Back
I'm
off.
not touching you, so don't.
Yeah, you're assaulting me. You're threatening me.
How the I threatening you?
You know what assault means? Assault means you're threatening me. You're threatening me, and you're live right now. They better watch it. Back off. Back off. Back off. Back off. Don't put your hands on him. Back off. Back off. Why don't you show your face, brave man? Huh? You're so brave. Why are you covering your face?
This is why we talk about the Harvards and the Columbias and the MITs incessantly, because unfortunately, what happens at the Harvard and Columbia and MITs has profound implications, not just for Jewish people, but for the American people. These are the future lawyers and doctors. These are the future policymakers and judges. These are the future thought leaders and authors that your children will be reading. And if it is that upper echelon of society, if it is the most progressive, the most elite, the most empathetic, sensitive, and intelligent, who are the same ones calling for an intifada and the freeing of Palestine from the river to the sea, then it becomes a much deeper issue. Behind me is really the heart and soul of Harvard University. This is Widener Library. This is one of the largest university libraries in the world. This is really, when you think of Harvard, when you think of its academic rigor, when you think of its intellectual discourse, you really think of Widener Library, which makes it all the more confounding, all the more difficult that this was the site of more than 1,000 students and professors shortly after October 7th. They gathered right here. Saying Harvard invests in genocide and in baby killing. A student speaker gets up and says that they're not going to condemn the resistance, and who are we to tell the Palestinian people how they can or can't resist.
We refuse genocide and ethnic cleansing. This should be universal truth. We're here today because Palestinians deserve recognition of the full spectrum of their humanity.
They actually
Hi, that was incredible. We're going to, I also went to Harvard for a nutrition certification, and I was on campus for a while, and it's just to see, it's really difficult to see and to watch what Jewish students are going through. But then at the same time, to see them rise up and be so strong in the face of this is also very, very heartwarming and incredible. But I can't believe this is the United States, to tell you the truth. Like, I can't believe this is Harvard. It's, this is Columbia. These are Ivy League universities. I can't believe that this is happening. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that is a preview of the documentary that's going to be released soon. And we're going to welcome Shabbos HaA'AM back to talk with Beatty and just kind of share his firsthand experience of some of the things that you saw just a moment ago, and in general, what his life has been like post-October 7th. Hi, Shabbos. Welcome back. That was tough to watch.
Yeah, very hard to see. How many times have you watched it, actually?
Oh yeah, I've seen it a couple of times, but yeah, it's difficult to watch. And to me, what's perhaps even most difficult is the story is only on 3 students, but we could easily have just done it on 300 students or 3,000 students. The unfortunate reality is this is not just an Ivy League university, but Ivy League problem, but this is a problem that has affected college campuses across the country. And without determined action, without accountability, the problem is only going to get worse. And we're not playing the whole video, but the end of the film actually ends on exactly what I believe is the right message, which is students themselves, myself included, we're not particularly interested in just combating anti-Semitism or fighting hate or leveling systems of oppression. What we're far more interested in, and what our actions speak and testify on, is that we are incredibly grateful to be part of the Jewish people, that we're part of this 3,000-year-old story. It's a tragic story. It's a difficult story. It doesn't always have the happiest endings, but it is a story that nonetheless is incredibly inspiring. And it's such a privilege that I get to wake up and play a small role in that story. I get to be a character in that story. And I would encourage as many Jews as possible to stand up and to be counted as part of that story.
I want to ask you, just so our audience gets a sense of kind of how life changed for you. And like you're saying, it's not just you, it's probably the majority of Jewish students on campuses. Like, what was your life like before? You know, were you very involved in anything? How did you grow up? Just give us a sense of what it was like before.
So I grew up in an observant house. I'm one of 7, which is fairly typical for my Orthodox community. I'm from Riverdale, New York, and I grew up as a first-generation American. So very proud of my Jewish identity and very proud of my American identity, never really seeing them as contradictory. And for the very first time, as I said in the film, I had to contend with that was after October 7th at Harvard University. And I did not expect to be doing this. I didn't really anticipate having to battle this silly fight. I was planning on going into education, maybe consultancy. I wasn't entirely sure. And I always say that over the night before October 7th, October 6th, I was a nerd writing mediocre research papers in the library, and I still am a nerd. I may not write as many research papers, but I was sort of thrust into this position. But no, this is not how I was expecting to spend my time at university and grad school. And when I went to Harvard, there was certainly a sense of pride and admiration. You heard Eden Yadiger from Columbia talking about this sense of pride when she got into Columbia, and contrasting that with our lived experiences on the ground has been quite difficult. But I think it's actually a testament to the community and to the family I am from and I was raised in that I am here today, because I don't think if I had that love of Judaism, love of Jewish history, love of Jewish culture, I don't think I would have spoken out. I don't think I would have continued in this fight for as long as I have. I think it's a direct result of the fact that I'm a proud product of the Jewish community. I had a Jewish upbringing. I went to Jewish school my whole life, and then I actually studied in AISH HA'AM for a few years. And this is simply a natural manifestation of the attachment and warm feelings I have with that community.
Was there any point that you can kind of remember or define for yourself where it was like, I either speak up or I don't, where you like had to make that decision and find the courage? And in a sense, it's like the Esther moment that we all just read about, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly no Esther, but what I would say is I remember after October.
Of course you are.
Nah. One of the first things I did after October 7th was I went to Israel. I always say I booked a one-way ticket, but that's really because Delta canceled the return ticket, but it sounds a lot more cooler to say one way. And I remember I was digging graves for soldiers killed in Gaza and delivering supplies to army hospitals, to army bases, and singing in hospitals. And I remember it was October 17th, I believe it was. I was in a bomb shelter in Tel Aviv. That was the night we bombed the hospital, which of course we didn't. It was a failed rocket attack from the Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorist organization. And I was, as in this bomb shelter, I was looking at my WhatsApp of the Harvard student WhatsApp group, and they were basically saying two things. One was that we bombed a hospital, and the other was, glory to the resistance because they're fighting back and retaliating. And it occurs to me, well, hang on a second, I'm the person they're retaliating against. It's a classmate of yours. I'm in a bomb shelter right now because Hamas is firing rockets at us. And it was sort of right then and there that I decided I was going to go back to Harvard. When I went to Israel on October 11th or 12th, whenever it was, I was not planning on returning. I was planning on on either taking a full semester off or just dropping out entirely. And it was that moment that I decided I cannot allow our story to be defined by our ideological adversaries. I cannot allow the story of the Jewish people to be written by people who seek our destruction and seek to harm and oppress us. So that's when I decided I would go back. And I'm not particularly outspoken. I'm not a particularly effective advocate, but I simply decided I had to do something. There's a great saying from the 2nd century rabbinic text, The Ethics of Our Fathers, of Lo alecha ha'am lacha ligmor, that it is not up to you to see that the task is completed, but neither are you absolved from doing nothing. You have to have skin in the game. You have to do something. And that's the message I always tell Jewish students on a college campus. It's what I tell policymakers in DC. It's what I tell the national media. Just do something. And if fighting back means wearing a Star of David necklace, if fighting back means going to your class and simply excelling academically in spite of the hatred, if fighting back means filing a lawsuit, whatever it is it means to you, just do something.
I don't think you can really say that you're not much of an advocate. Like, you speak so eloquently and you really understand the situation more than so many other people. So I think you're doing major advocacy work. And I think what you're doing is even more important. Like, there's a lot of people who spend a lot of time kind of like trying to prove how we're right or whatever it is. And I think your message is more powerful because you're really inspiring Jews to be proud Jews and to not compromise on what it means to be a Jew and to have a strong Jewish identity and to not let any institution, take that away from us. So I think like you really are making a huge impact on the Jewish community. So can you tell us a little bit now, kind of what you're doing, what your day-to-day life looks like, what you're involved with? Are you still at Harvard?
No, so I graduated. I'm a recent university graduate. Day to day, every day is kind of like a new adventure. So just this morning, I met with officials from DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, and the Federal Task Force Against Antisemitism. I'm going to Queens later tonight to actually speak on a panel about this film. Then tomorrow I'm meeting with a group of young Israelis who want to understand diasporic Jewry. So every day it's kind of a new adventure. I guess the term is activist or advocate. I always joke that I just complain a lot. Fortunately, it does pay now. Now I charge to complain, so I get to pay the bills. But each day it's a different adventure. The one thing I always say is whatever my professional prospects look like, in a practical way, it will always be advocating for the community I know and love, and that's the American Jewish community. I'm so privileged and honored and fortunate that I get to have a platform. It's small, but it's a platform nonetheless, and I get to speak on behalf of those who've entrusted me with their stories, and I get to advocate and amplify Jewish student voices. And that's the most important and that's the most meaningful part of what I do. I get to, when they want and when they ask, I get to be an advocate for their needs and ensure that they have the resources they need to defend not just themselves, but to defend the Jewish people.
Have you had college students reach out to you from other campuses for asking for advice or support?
Yeah, of course. Literally every day. Every single day I have a call with a student at Cornell tonight. In fact, there's actually there's a WhatsApp group we formed shortly after October 7th. And in this WhatsApp group, I think the number now is 80. It's 80 student leaders from across college campuses. So think of a major college and they're in this group chat. And it essentially came because we're not advocates. We're not activists. We don't know how to raise money. We don't know how to give speeches. We just know that we've experienced anti-Semitism and we want to help the Jewish people. So we brainstorm, we network, we give help to each other. And it's remarkable because this was done not through a Jewish nonprofit or the Jewish leadership. This was a grassroots initiative by students for students. So every day I'm on the phone at least with one student, usually a bit more, trying to see what can we do to make sure they have funds to have a tabling event on campus or to bring in a speaker. If they want to look into litigation, can we set them up with lawyers? So there's a lot to do, both qualitatively and quantitatively. But as I said, I'm incredibly fortunate that I get to be part of this space and I get to play a very, very small role in being helpful to not America's future leaders, but America's current leaders. Those are the young Jewish students.
I wanted to ask you two questions. One, was there ever a moment for you that you thought to yourself, because we've talked to a couple of students since, especially with this AISH HA'AM and the, running in the World Zionist Congress. And we asked them the same thing, like, is there ever a moment when you thought to yourself, is this going to, prevent me from doing something professionally, where you like doubted if you speak up, it would prevent you from doing something professionally that you were studying or you were interested in doing? And was there a moment of doubt at all, or was it simply like you didn't think about it, you just jumped in?
Yeah, certainly other people have had those moments, which is why it was quite difficult to get more plaintiffs in our lawsuit against Harvard. Even now, speaking to the national media, I have tried to convince other students to get more involved and have their name out there, but many are concerned about the professional opportunities being diminished. Many are concerned about the social isolation, and this is not a criticism. I get where they're coming from. I mean, I lost almost all of my friends. Ironically, my professional opportunities have actually increased. So if there's any Jewish student listening to this, if you fight for the Jewish people, you could actually get a good job out of this. So let that be an insight.
100%.
But in terms of my experience, no, at no point did I ever once think that I was going to change my attitudes, behaviors, or opinions to accommodate other people's hatred, bigotry, or discrimination. I always knew that this was the right thing to do. And if that meant that I were to lose my friends, then it's difficult, but it's the price I'd be willing to pay. And at the same time, I get death threats pretty often from the far left and the far right. I'm very bipartisan. Both sides want to kill me. But I always joke that if these people, neo-Nazis and the far left, if they don't like me, I'm clearly doing the right thing. So.
Exactly. The other question I wanted to ask you, and I'm really interested in your take on this, because there's this big debate right now as to whether, the West, or be it the United States or Europe, it doesn't matter, which have been for a long time safe havens and home for a lot of, Jewry, world Jewry in the diaspora. Is it time to, give that up, or is it worth fighting for? Is like
sure.
time for people to make aliyah and give up on the Jewish diaspora, or is it worth fighting for?
I would say this: Jews should not run from something; they should run to something. So you should move to Israel, because Israel is the ancestral homeland of the Jewish people, because Israel is the only Jewish state in the entire world, because Israel is a place where you can live your most transparent, authentic self. I think that's why you should move to Israel. Run to it. I don't think you should run from the United States, because number one, just long term, it's not going to last. You will, if you're simply running away from something, well, once that situation improves, you'll just move back. But number two, running from something sort of negates the beautiful aspects of having a modern state of Israel in the 21st century. So move to Israel for all of the issues, for all the reasons I just articulated, not because you're scared of what some idiots are doing on college campuses. If I define myself by my roommates who are drawing swastikas, or by my classmates who are smashing windows and saying Jews off our campus, then I would have a pretty cynical and angry look on the world. But I don't define myself based on our ideological adversaries. I define myself based on being a Jewish person. So individuals who want to move to Israel, great, you should do it, because that's the homeland of the Jewish people, not because you care or take into consideration at any measurement, at any length, the stupidity of the other side. So run to, don't run from.
I love that answer. Actually, it's kind of, people ask me, it's the same thing I say. You can't view, Israel as some sort of refuge. It's the homeland of the Jewish people. It's not a plan B. So if you're doing it just because it's a plan B, then, don't do it. You have to be sure about it. And I love that you have that outlook on it. It's basically, we're not to be defined by those that hate us. We're to be defined by, our survival and our history and everything that makes us who we are. Sorry, Bidi, were you going to say something?
No, I actually was going back to what you said about having a WhatsApp group of 80 student leaders. I was going to put in a small plug for our United Against Anti-Semitism community, which is kind of what we're trying to grow and create. Basically a support for all the students who aren't necessarily trying to be activists or outspoken, but are just on campus dealing with anti-Semitism on a daily basis and want support and want community and want resources. And it sounds like you're doing a great job with the WhatsApp chat. And it's funny because we do have it on a platform, and I feel like that's like another hurdle to get students to go join a community platform. But I am optimistic, and ultimately, our goal is just to be that resource and to turn what we could perceive as something so negative, anti-Semitism, into something positive and powerful. And I think you could probably agree that the Jewish community has seen an outpouring of unity and of a desire of Jews around the world feeling their, spark reignited. Jews who never had any interest in doing anything Jewish suddenly have a strong desire and connection to understand, like, why, if everyone else cares so much that I'm a Jew, like, right, I got to wake up and be like, why am I Jewish? Why does it matter? What am I doing with my life? And so, like, that's ultimately, I think, what we're offering on the community. And
happy to plug United Against Anti-Semitism as well. If there are any Jewish students listening, it's a great platform. I encourage you to use it. And it sort of reminds me, I studied in AISH. So AISH is not just a slate running for the World Zionist Congress. It's not just a website, but it's also a yeshiva where you learn. And I was there for a couple of years. And I remember there was this famous line of Rabbi Eliezer Menachem Shach, who was one of the great rabbinic figures of the 20th century. And he goes to visit AISH HaTorah, and he sees individuals who came from families or communities that were not particularly observant or educated in Judaism. And he sees that they're learning the Talmud for the very first time. They're keeping Shabbat for the very first time. They're eating kosher for the very first time. And he basically gets up in the middle of the yeshiva and says, look, if one man can destroy 6 million, then think what one Jew can do to save 6 million. And while that's certainly an extreme posture and extreme articulation of those values, nevertheless, he's touching them on something really, really true, which is don't underestimate your ability as a student on a campus to affect real long-lasting change, not just for yourself, but for the Jewish community at large.
Yeah, 100%.
I want to just follow up on what you were saying there. Is that something you're seeing as well, like from the students reaching out to you, the students in the WhatsApp group? Is that something you're finding as well? Were they affiliated beforehand? Are they trying to not only get support, but are they trying to connect more with their Judaism? Or what are you noticing?
Of course. I mean, at Harvard Chabad, we have so many people, we kind of had to clear out the top floor because we can't fit everyone. While it is true that there are many individuals who've taken off their kippah, who've tucked in their Star of David necklace, who've ceased their involvement in Jewish life on campus, for every one of them, I could tell you, 20 more who've said, I may not be particularly observant, but I'm going to light Friday night candles for a hostage, or I'm going to recite a chapter of Psalms for one of the soldiers, or I'm going to tuck out to wear my Star of David necklace. I mean, after October 7th, I bought a bigger kippah to wear on campus. So yes, there are stories of people receding and hiding their Jewish identity. And again, that's not a criticism. I get why they do it. But on the other hand, what a remarkable testament to the Jewish people, what a powerful manifestation of who we are as a people, that you have so many more people who are actually running towards the Jewish people and Jewish values.
That's incredible. It's incredible to hear. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
I was curious I'm going to ask you one more question before we go to the rapid round. I would just love to understand if you could pinpoint one value or message that you think you got from your home that has really given you the strength to do what you do. Because I think, like, obviously your parents are amazing people and you got a very strong, powerful education from your family.
I'll tell them you said that. Yeah, so I grew up in a house where every single wall was covered in bookcases filled with 16th and 17th century Jewish books and manuscripts. My dad moved to the United States 30 years ago to start his own business called Kestenbaum & Company, and it's an auction house. And this auction house specializes in rare Jewish books and manuscripts and paintings. So I grew up in a house where Jewish values, Jewish culture, and Jewish history was paramount. I even remember, as I said, I went to Jewish day school my whole life. I even remember when my dad would pay the yeshiva tuition, which, if you know anything about yeshiva tuition, it's not exactly cheap. He would come home at night very proud. This was a moment of extreme jubilation if he's able to send his kids for another year to a Jewish day school. So to me, the most important value was education. Just growing up in a house surrounded by parents and siblings who were invested both financially and practically, but also spiritually and emotionally, investing in making sure that their kids appreciate the beauty, the warmth, and the power of being part of this 3,000-year-old story, the story of the Jewish people. And I always make this point of, if you don't want to keep Shabbat, or you don't want to eat kosher, it's your life, it's your Judaism, you have to do what works. However, at least know what Shabbat is before you made that decision. And unfortunately, I've met so many people, in particular on college campuses, who've never been in a yeshiva, who never went to a Jewish day school. So they're not keeping Shabbat, but they don't know what Shabbat is. They're not keeping kosher because they don't actually know what the laws are. And I think if they were actually to learn them, and if they were to spend even just a month or two in Israel, I think they would have an entirely different worldview on their connection with their Judaism. And there's this great line from Rabbi Menachem Mendel Morgenstern, who was the Rebbe of Kutsk in the 19th century, this Hasidic master. And he was known for having these sharp lines. And one of his sharp lines was, the God you don't believe in, I don't believe in either. So if your perception of God is he's this vengeful, spiteful, cynical being, then yeah, I wouldn't want to believe in him either. But if your perception around God shifts and he actually wants what's best for you and he wants you to maximize your time on earth, that's actually a God I would want to have a relationship with. So to answer your question in a nutshell, it's education. And there's so much out there. I mean, the Talmud itself, if you were to just learn a page a day, and a page is tough, it's double-sided.
A page is a lot.
It's a lot. It's in Aramaic. That would take you 7.5 years, and that's just the Talmud. So there's so much out there to learn, to study, to read. So I just encourage anyone, especially young people, to get in touch with their Judaism and to be as educated as possible.
That's beautiful. I particularly love what you're saying about your father being excited about tuition, because we had the opposite when, you know, there would be, unfortunately, like a father sitting down at the Shabbat table and saying, it's so hard to be a Jew and it's so hard to support, you know, like I'm going to get fired by my job if I don't show up for Shabbat, and feeling the weight of it, and that message transferred over the opposite effect on the kids. So you definitely having that enthusiasm and being so, you know, proud and support of what it means to educate your child in a Jewish yeshiva is incredible. We are going to go to our rapid fire round. And you speak really quickly, so this should be no big deal for you. Okay, let's do your favorite Jewish holiday growing up and now.
Oh, well, I'm a little biased. It's Hanukkah, but that's because my birthday's on Hanukkah, so I would get double the presents. So that one's easy, and it's still Hanukkah. I have, even though I'm older, I still look forward to getting presents on my birthday.
Are you bagels or barekas?
I'm a New Yorker, so bagels.
Okay, this is a good one. Shabbat Shalom or Good Shabbos?
Oh, man. Yeah, I can't tell you. When your name is Shabbos, the amount of puns and stupid jokes. And I speak across the country on Shabbat. That's typically when I speak the most. And every rabbi has to welcome me with the same Good Shabbos, so it's terrible.
Yeah.
But when I say Shabbos now, I specifically say Shabbat, so people don't get confused.
Oh, okay. There we go. Shabbat Shalom. If you could have Shabbat dinner with any biblical figure, who would it be?
Whoa. That's a tough one. Well, I'll put it this way. I actually wrote my I wrote my graduate application to Harvard on Jonah, like Jonah and the whale, because his philosophy of being able to run away from God is something I've always been interested in. And of course, he realizes you can't, and he has, a whole 180. But I would always be interested in learning from him what he actually thought he could do by running away from God, if he thought that was like a practical pursuit. So maybe Jonah. And we would serve fish. Oh, that's funny. Okay. Yes.
Well, here's your next question. Are you a gefilte fish guy? Yay or nay?
Not only am I gefilte fish, I'm also a herring guy. I'm very into anything like old Ashkenazi and gross. I'm very into.
Okay, it's actually so fun seeing the different Jewish traditions come out with everyone we interview. What's your favorite? Oh, challah. Do you do classic, raisin, or chocolate chip?
Honestly, I travel so often. I'm at so many people's homes for Shabbos. I just do, whatever's there. By the time I get to their house, I'm so exhausted. Yeah, anything. Anything is fine.
We should add in sourdough. I just recently started making gluten-free sourdough. It's really good. What is your favorite Israeli city?
That's also a good one. Well, I have two, but for two very different reasons. One, I'll give you the bad answer first. The bad answer is Tel Aviv, because you just can't compete with the beaches and the culture and the nightlife. But the better answer that my rabbis would be a lot more proud of is Tzfas, all the way up in the north of Israel.
I love Tzfas.
It's the site of Jewish spirituality, of Jewish mysticism. There are lots of cool caves you could discover. There's an old ritual bath there. So it's a very cool hipster place. My brother's bar mitzvah more than 15 years ago was in Tzfas. And I still remember it. It was a very cool experience. Very trippy, but very cool.
I was a big Tzfat girl. When I was in seminary, and I went to a very ultra-Orthodox seminary, no one goes people weren't doing hippie trips to Tzfat, but I really liked it. And I went there for Rosh Hashanah. I spent 3 days there not knowing a soul. And yeah, I thought I was going to move there, but then I kind of ended up in total opposite. Who's your favorite Jewish celebrity?
My favorite Jewish celebrity. We don't really have celebrities. She's not really a celebrity, but Einat Wilf and Natasha, who I don't remember her last name, Natasha Hasdorf, I think is her last name. Again, I don't think they count as celebrities, but they're public intellectuals. But they are just absolutely incredible in terms of taking very complex ideas, synthesizing them into these digestible, bite-sized pieces that anyone can understand. So, big fans of both of them.
Nice. And what is the most Jewish thing you've done this week?
This week? Well, are we counting like the Jewish week? So like it started today, or
we can do from the whole week because Sunday's the first leg. Yeah.
I spoke at an old age home. That's very nice, a Jewish old age home, because we in the Jewish community we have this saying that in the secular world, the farther you get from when we were chimpanzees, the farther you get, the more intelligent, the more sophisticated, the more worthy of respect you deserve. But in Judaism, we say no. The closer you were to the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, the more respect and honor we want to give to you. So our elderly, they are the last of that link. So we in the Jewish community treat them with a tremendous amount of respect and awe and reverence. And so speaking at the Jewish nursing home and telling them that we are following in their footsteps and that we are simply standing on their shoulders. That was a very nice moment for me to be able to express that appreciation to them.
I actually saw that and I was so impressed because I sometimes get asked to come speak at different old age places in Netanya and Beit Shemesh, and it's just always like really hard to make it happen because there's always so many things going on. And I was like, wow, like Shabbos is so busy and you are so busy, and you didn't just do it the way you speak about it now. Like I actually have chills, and they say this, and it's really true. Like the greatest people in life, the people who you think are the busiest, have time for everyone. They make the time for the things that are important, and you can really see that with you. And Hashem should always give you the time to help everyone and to support. Like you should always be able to follow your heart and your passion and do what you can for the Jewish people, because like you're using your time so well. It's so
Amen.
clear.
Amen. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
And yeah, we're gonna just end. My last question is just give everyone listening one reason to be proudly Jewish today.
Just one? Oh man, that's
you gave a lot. You gave a lot, but like
right.
One takeaway. That's like pack it in.
Look, I'll end it by saying a story. I speak a lot, and I was in Miami a few months ago. And as I'm speaking, this is a story I say a lot, so it's possible you've heard it. As I'm speaking, a woman raises her hand and she says, I want to add something. And as I said, I get death threats, I get heckled. It's never a good sign in the middle of a speech when someone raises their hand and says, I want to add something. So this woman gets up, and I'm a little nervous, and she says, my name is Regina. I'm 103 years old. She says, I'm a survivor of Majdanek. I'm a survivor of Bergen-Belsen. I'm a survivor of and I'm a survivor, and I fought in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. It's like 2 months ago she told me this. And she said, I want you all to know we will get through this because we've gotten through it before. And then she sits back down. And I think there is no greater manifestation of the Jewish people than that anecdote of a Holocaust survivor telling a group of relatively young Jews, we will get through this because we've gotten through it before. So I know things are difficult. I know things are challenging. I know it doesn't seem like there will be a good ending and a good conclusion to this, not just on American college campuses, but in the state of Israel and across the world. Things seem bleak, but I can assure you, as Regina said, we will get through this because we've gone through it before. And regardless of your level of observance, regardless on your level of education, the fact that you get to be part of this story, it's a pretty small story. It's pretty select. There are only 15 million of us, which is really not a lot. But the fact that you get to be part of it is such an immense opportunity to do real good and to do some real change. And so to me, that's just one reason, being part of a tapestry of people who have done some extraordinary things.
Yes.
That's incredible. Thank you. We love that. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good luck with all your speaking events. And when you're back in Israel, we'll do another recording live.
Yeah, let's do it. Thank you both so much. I appreciate it. Take care.
Bye-bye. Take care. Bye. Wow. He is something else.
Powerhouse, really.
He has time for everything. He's like, he told us this day, and he's like, I'm talking to a student over here, I'm speaking over there, I'm going to Congress. I said to Netanyahu last week, I'm like, what?
Yeah, really
Wow.
blown away.
Every time we have one of these episodes and we talk, especially to people from the next generation, as a mom, I'm just so hopeful. You know, I'm just like, wow, this, you know, especially what he just said with the Holocaust survivor that stood up and said, like, we'll get through this. It's going to be okay. And then we hear from people like him and even younger who are just so fired up and so informed and so on top of it and so ready to stand up for their people. I think it's just amazing.
Really
So,
is. Gives me a lot of hope.
Thank you all for joining us.
We're going to have
Before
another
we go-
episode next week. We're doing an Ask an IDF Soldier, so everyone should tune
Yeah,
in.
so
It's gonna
before
be
we
a lot of
go,
fun. We're going to put it on
let
our
everyone
socials.
know about
A lot
that,
more
and
of you
let
here live.
Yeah, and also let everyone know how they can vote in the AISH HA'AM election.
Okay, all you got to do is go to aish.com/vote. You create a login. It takes you to the AZM website, which is an external site. It does take 5 steps, and you do need to pay $5. You need to get a PIN confirmation in your email, but it's a fairly simple process. Walk you through it and vote number 10, AISH HA'AM, and let's put our mouth where our and put the money where the mouth is, whatever the expression is, but show up for the Jewish people, combating anti-Semitism, the values you care about, supporting the future, our next young Jewish leaders.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Everyone go vote. I think you do need to be a U.S. citizen, right? Or a U.S. resident.
U.S. citizen, and you can't have voted in the previous Knesset elections.
Yeah, so just keep
So
that
those
in
two
mind.
things.
But otherwise, everyone go vote and also get the word out. Invite your friends, invite your grandparents who care about, you know, the future of life on campus for their grandchildren. Invite everyone, and let's make this happen together. Thank you everyone for joining us. And like Bidi said, we'll see you again next week with, I know we're usually bi-weekly, but next week Bidi is hosting an Ask an IDF Soldier, so you don't want to miss that as well. And be sure to obviously check into the community regular, because that's where you get updates for everything that we're doing and everything that's happening on United Against Anti-Semitism. So thank you, everyone. See you all next time.
Bye-bye.